I now declare the 100th AGM of the FBEU officially open, and I now call on my friend and comrade, the State Secretary of the FBEU, Jim Casey, to give his State of the Union address. Comrade Casey.
Comrades and friends, the State Secretary's report is something that always takes a bit of time and effort, but trying to produce this, something that does justice to our 100 years, has proved a challenging task. We are the oldest firefighters union in the world. We were the first, the firefighters in Sydney were the first to stand up and say, we need to be treated with dignity. Enough is enough. Now today, we've marched through the streets of Sydney. We're in this top shelf venue, we're looking out over the harbour. But in 1910, things were very different. Firefighters worked a 168-hour week. It sort of beggars belief. I've been reading that over and over again for years. It just doesn't quite seem right. It's every hour in the week. They were basically shackled to the station for 7 days. On the 8th day, they got it off. They couldn't leave the station area without permission from the boss. They had to ask permission to marry. They weren't allowed to gamble. They had to clean the clothing, the boots and the accommodation of their officers. They were poorly paid by the standards of the day, and the conditions they worked under were extremely unsafe. Conditions were so poor actually that many firefighters were ex-sailors because they were the only mugs who could handle the harsh discipline which they were expected to work under. Predictably though, there were some who refused to be treated like this, and they began to organise this union. Jim Lambert, who was State Secretary between 46 and 68, a fantastic comrade, someone we all owe so much to. He joined the job in the union in 1928, and he recalled that when he joined, the old hands told him that the first meetings were held in Hyde Park or under a street lamp on Goulburn Street. They couldn't do it on the stations because the victimisation and the response from management they were going to get was more than their job was worth. That's what they started with. The first activists did it all by push bike. They were cycling literally hundreds of kilometres a week to get around stations and talk to the men, because they were all men, about what they needed to do to start to take a bit of control back and gain a little bit of dignity at work. So in 1910, we needed a union, and a handful of dedicated men went out and built one. The defining fight for our first 75 years has been the question of the hours, trying to get it down to a manageable kind of working week. So in 1910 it was 168 hours. The first big breakthrough was in 1913 when it went down to 138 hours. By 1920 they'd got the fantastic 120 hours, 84 hours a week in 1927, 78 hours a week by 1938, 1945, 56 hours, and then in 1955 on the back of serious concerted industrial action they won the 40-hour week. It took another 2 decades before we get the roster we enjoy today. The 100 years of this union, we have, the men and women who've gone before us have transformed this job. It's gone from being a job which was a byword for extreme discipline and low pay to being the last of the blue-collar careers. You can come into this job with nothing but a high school education, and you can have a decent working life, a trade which is respected, the respect to your community. You get the chance to work with some great comrades and come out the end of it now. It's not the top end of town, but it's a pretty good life by my accounting. We made that. Everything we have has been fought for and won by those that went before us. Take safe minimum crewing. 4 on a pump. That's like a law to me. I would not get on an appliance without another 3 people on that appliance. And I know I'm not alone in saying that in this room today. But that was won as recently as 1983 on the back of action by the union. It took until 87 for actually 4 on a pump to be the norm across the state. And in Broken Hill, they didn't get it till 99. In Australia, other states in Australia, they're still running some places on SO2. Any given day in Melbourne, there's a pump or 2 pumps with SO2. But that doesn't happen here because we don't let it happen here. Now, I could go on and talk about PPE appliances, station amenities, our leave provisions. I'm not going to do that for 2 reasons. One, because everyone wants to get the bar open. But the other because I'd actually encourage all of the serving members here today to grab a retired member and ask them about the changes they've seen in the job and how those changes occurred. They know those stories better than I do because they lived those stories. It was their activity that created the job that we all joined. Now that's the bread and butter of what we do as a union. I want to talk about something a little bit more nebulous now. I want to talk about the concept of dignity. You've all worked other jobs. You all have families and friends employed outside the brigade. The unique nature of our union defines how we are treated at work. Management can't just simply ride roughshod over us. They can't rule by diktat. They can't ride roughshod, and they certainly did in the past, in the history of this job. The job control we exercise at the moment is the exception to the rule in 2010. When you look at other industries, we are rare. We are out of step with the rest of the organised working class movement in this country, and proudly so. The degree of collective control we have is exceptional. Show me another industry in the country where the workforce as a group wields as much power. Through our militancy and through smart politics, we have inherited and continue to build something quite extraordinary. Now, with that power comes responsibility. When others are standing up for a fair go, we need to stand up and support them. The FBEU has a long and proud history of support for other unions, for the peace movement, for the movement for social change. We are strong enough that we can and should offer support to those who are struggling to achieve the dignity at work or in the community that we take for granted. Now, I've spoken a lot about our strength, and rightly so, but I want to talk about, in a sense, our potential weaknesses briefly. We're not bulletproof. There's a basic tension that runs through fire brigades the world over between those who fight the fires and those who manage the service. My predecessor, Frank Bryce, State Secretary between 68 and 85, captured this very well when he wrote, "The union continues to seek better conditions of employment and job satisfaction for its members, and the fire brigade endeavours to fulfil its responsibilities in providing protection at the cheapest possible price." And so, the class struggle between the worker and the employer continues. These words have been as true for as long as firefighters have been paid, and it's not going to change anytime soon. There is a conflict at the heart of the brigade between the men and women who do this for a living and the governments that want us to do it on the cheap. In London, this Saturday, our comrades in the FBEU are stopping work for 8 hours. They're doing that because the employer is trying to change the roster system, and the way they're going to do that is sacking everyone and rehiring them on new contracts. In preparation for this dispute, the employer has taken 25 frontline appliances out of stations, put them in a secret location, and is staffing them with scab labour. We need to ask ourselves, are we ready to face a fight like that? How would we respond? If the London firefighters lose this fight, the lesson won't be lost on our bosses here. Industrial relations knows no borders. So I encourage all of you to think this one through. We're going to be facing a new government next year, and that government, be it Labor or Liberal, will attempt to cut back expenditure in the public sector. For us, that means we either compromise on wages and conditions, or we use every weapon in our arsenal to ensure that that cannot be done. I'm almost done, comrades. Look, the question has to be asked, where are we at? And the answer, the union is as strong now industrially as it's ever been. Every permanent member and 85% of the retained are members. While things are not perfect, we've started to really improve the internal communications in the union. We've begun the process of training and resourcing station delegates properly. There is money in the bank. Our financial health is as good now as it's ever been. We've expanded the staff of the union significantly over the last 3 months to be better prepared for the struggles to come. On any estimation, we are a formidable union. We're united, we're organised, and we're not afraid to stand up and have a go. I said earlier that we're out of step with the rest of the Labor movement. Perhaps it'd be more accurate to say that we're actually out in front of them, and we have to be prepared to fight to hang on to that. Look, our muscle comes from our collective strength, but we're a union that doesn't just deliver the big hits, we also know how to box smart. And it's appropriate now to recognise those who make the union work day to day and week to week. Firstly, the State Committee. The current committee is a dedicated group of men. Darren Sullivan, Travis Broadhurst, Matt Murray, Tim Anderson, Andy Coppin, Wes Smith, Martin Dixon, Jason Morgan, Terry Kirkpatrick, Ken Smith, Luke Russell and Terry Farley. It is my privilege and my pleasure to work with these men. To the sub-branch executives, the station delegates and the activists, on behalf of the rest of the rank and file, I thank you. Without that layer of local leadership, of station leadership, we would be nothing. And to the staff of the union, we all owe you. Most members will never be aware of the intricacies of the work which goes on in that union office. With a handful of dedicated and industrial and administrative staff, we successfully face off against the department's massive resources. No one works for the FBEU for the earn or for a bludge. They do it because they're committed to the cause. And finally, and most importantly, to those who have gone before us, make no mistake, comrades, we stand on the shoulders of giants. In often terrible conditions, our forebears stood up and fought for their dignity as workers, and every day we step onto a fire station, we're reaping the rewards of that, which means we have a responsibility to make sure that their efforts are recognised, defended and expanded. It's my ambition to leave this job better than I found it, out of respect for those who went before me, out of respect for myself and my trade, and as a legacy for the men and women yet to join the job. To close on a personal note, to stand here before you all today is the greatest honour of my life. Today's a day of celebration of the past and a day to reflect about where the future will lead us. I look forward to standing shoulder to shoulder with all of you in the struggles to come. Thank you.